Hey there, welcome to another video for Lady Fit. Okay, so we've got a circuit for you today. First of all, make sure you've warmed up. You can watch one of the other videos. I made a warm-up video for you. So we're going to start with a lower body circuit. I'm going to run through it one time for you as a tutorial, and then you can do the full thing on your own, anywhere from 2 to 4 sets. So your first one is a bodyweight squat. So your feet are about shoulder distance apart and sitting the hips back, and then stand up nice and tall. Simple squat here. So if you have weights at home, you can grab those. If you're working with body weight only, you probably want to work on maybe adding some extra reps in there. So I'm going to advise on about 20 reps here. But again, it's up to you kind of where you're at. So make sure those knees are driving out, that chest is staying up, and you're pushing up nice and tall. Squeeze the butt, squeeze the quads. Nice and simple body weight squat. So that's one, number one. And then our second one, you're going to need a chair. So this is just for balance. If you're fine with your balance, then you might not need the chair at all. We're going to go from a single leg deadlift to a single leg stand. So the chair, or even a wall actually for this one, or nothing at all. So if you're close to your chair or your wall, the inside leg is going to step back. The outside leg is going to be your standing leg. You're going to hinge back in your hips, bend the knees slightly, and then reach the other leg back, and then come up and pull that knee in and stand. So if you need something, again, you're just holding on just a fingertip or two for balance. Don't try not to rely a ton on it and really grip it. It's just there for a little bit of support. So you should feel this in your hamstring and the glute. Really squeeze as you stand up nice and tall, working on that balance. So from the side here, you want to make sure as you're hinging back that this leg that's reaching back behind you, that hip, is not opening. So you want to try to face the floor. So you're down and then standing up nice and tall. Lots of core here, really pulling in for balance. Down, reach, up, and stand. So you want to go slow, pause with control. I would recommend 10 to 15 per leg, and then I'll show you just on the other side. I'll just move this over a little bit here. So hinge back. From here, make sure the spine is nice and long. Reach back, stand up tall, hold for that balance. Reach, keep the shoulders back. So as you're coming down, make sure you're not rounding. If you want to tap the floor, that's fine. You can reach with one hand and then come up, squeeze here, stand tall. Lots of balance, lots of control. Go nice and slow. Good. So 10 to 15 of those on each side, and then we'll go to number 3. So you're going to need your chair again. So these are little quad burners. So you want to get a chair or stool or something that's not too high. We're gonna come onto it like a plank. So your toes are gonna be on the edge here, and your hands are on the floor. So you're in a plank position. What we're gonna do is bend the knees and straighten the legs, and focus on really squeezing the quads. Okay, so come down. So you're on the balls of your feet here, and they're on the edge of your chair, and then the shoulders nice and stable over the wrist. We're going to bend the knees towards the floor and then straighten. So straighten and really squeeze the quads. This is also a lot of core work and shoulder work. So I would recommend, once you kind of get into a rhythm, you're going to definitely start to feel that burn happening. You're also, of course, going to feel your core, shoulders as well. So play around with this one. This is a higher surface for sure, so it's a little bit more challenging. You could start with something lower, but you do need your feet elevated onto something. You can't just do this one straight onto the floor because you're not going to get that big enough range of motion. And then I would attempt somewhere between 20, maybe even up to 30 repetitions. All right, and then our last one, you're going to need your chair again. So for this one, you want to have a chair or a stool that has something that you can reach your legs through. So if you have a chair with like a solid back, you might want to find something different for this one. So this is going to target the adductors. It's another really challenging one. So play around with it, start small, see how it feels. Okay, so we're going to come into it sideways. And then we're in almost like a side plank position again here. So we're going to have our top leg onto the chair. You want to make sure that your knee is on the chair. Otherwise, if your knee was off, it just puts a little bit too much pressure into the knee joint to begin with anyways. So you want your whole leg on the chair, bottom leg is on the floor to start with, and then get nice and stable in your shoulder first. So elbows under the shoulder. We're drawing the shoulder blade down the back as if we're prepping for a side plank. Use your other hand to push yourself up. So getting into position first. Keep this leg on the floor until you're nice and steady. And then we want to stack ourselves here. And when you're ready, we can come up and down with this bottom leg. So it's like we're squeezing the chair between our thighs. You're going to feel this a ton in that top leg and then a little bit into the bottom. Really important to stay really stable in the shoulder. Add some padding under your elbow. If you're collapsing like this, it's really not good for the shoulder joint. If this one is just too much for you, then you can also do just a floor version here. So you're just going to stay again onto the elbow, and then you're going to work the bottom leg. So this top leg is bent with your foot on the floor, and then you can come up and down, focusing on that adductor squeeze at the top. So that would be an alternative if you didn't want to put your leg onto the chair. Okay, so like I said, 2 to 4 complete sets, and then take a rest between each one, and then I'll see you for the upper body portion. Okay, so for our upper body portion, we're going to start in a tabletop position on the floor. If you need something under your knees, feel free to grab that. So we're going to start tabletop, so your hips are stacked over the knees, shoulders over the wrists, and then we're going to start with the right side. So we're just going to bring the right arm up with the thumb facing up and then down towards the floor. So bringing it overhead, reaching it up. Make sure on the left side here that you feel nice and stable. So you're not collapsing here, you're pushing the floor away. And try to maintain a nice long spine. So 10 overhead position, and then 10 out wide. So palm is facing the floor, and you're squeezing that shoulder blade towards the spine. So 10 there, and then 10 going back behind you. Again, palm is facing down. And again, you're sort of squeezing the shoulder blade in, hugging the armpit in, extending that arm back. You're going to feel some work happening on the left side too, just because it's holding you up. You're going to feel your core needing to work to keep you stable because you're not twisting, you're staying facing the floor. And then 10 there. So it's 10 forward, 10 side, 10 back. You can shake that out and then go to the other side. Nice and stable on the right side. Thumb facing up here. Forward, overhead. And then 10 out to the side. Again, we're trying not to rotate or move. Pause and squeeze. And then 10 back. Excellent. So I'm going to show you one alternative for that. If being on the floor is uncomfortable for you, you can use your chair and you can just come into a tabletop position from here. So your feet are wide, knees bent, hand on the floor, and then you can go from here. So it's less pressure on the shoulder and the wrist. And then you would do the same thing and then back. All right, so that is number one. And the second exercise is a tricep dip. So you'll need your chair again. And then you're going to come to the edge of the chair with your hands, heels on the edge, fingertips facing down. Walk yourself off. Make sure you're not shrugging here. So push the shoulder blades down the back. The closer your feet are, the easier it is. So you can adjust as needed. Make sure you don't end up way out here. So you're going straight down towards the floor. Bend the elbows back, and then push yourself back up. So I'm going to recommend anywhere from 10 to 20 of these. Make sure the elbows don't flare out. They're hugging in and back behind you. So 10 to 20, and then we'll go to number 3. So you'll need your chair again. We're going to do a side plank hip dip from the chair position. So it'll be work for the obliques and the shoulder scapula area. So bringing your hand onto your chair, and then you don't have to be directly over the wrist. Just find something that's comfortable for you. You want to be close, but you don't have to be straight over it. And then you want to stack the feet. You can take your other hand onto your hip and then drop the hip towards the floor. The shoulder is going to come up a little bit, and then you want to push the hip up and the shoulder down the back. So let yourself sink, but with control, and then push away. So I'll show you from the back. And again, this one can be intense. You can definitely do this on the floor, but I would recommend doing it elevated at first, especially for that shoulder. And so from this side, so really watch the shoulder stays down. So you're gonna drop the hip, let that shoulder come up, and then push the shoulder down as you take the hip back up. So most of these exercises that I have today for the upper body is heavy on the wrists. So if you have any wrist concerns, then just be careful. Don't do as many reps. With this one here, I would do around 10 to 15. I'll show you one alternative on the floor that you can do with your elbow instead. So again, you won't get as big of a range of motion, but at least you'll be able to do the exercise. So elbow under the shoulder for support, and then lift the hips, hand onto your hip. And again, we're drawing the shoulder down, so you're gonna let your hips collapse towards the floor and then push back up, draw that shoulder blade down the back. Try to stay in a nice straight line. Oops, and then don't fall over. Okay, so that's your alternative if being on the wrist is too much. And then for our last one, we're gonna do some crawling. So crawling is amazing for the body. It's probably something you haven't done since maybe you were a toddler or baby. But it's great integration of the whole body, the core, the shoulders, and the hips. So you want to make sure you've got some space, find yourself a hallway, and then come onto all fours. So I'm going to show you a couple variations. Basic variation would just be obviously knees down. And then you want to just think opposite knee and hand are moving together. So the less you think about it, the easier it is. And you want to focus on trying to stay nice and steady and not shifting the hips around. And it gets harder with the next variation. So you want to tuck your toes under, come into your tabletop position, and then pull the core in, lift the knees up, and then crawl from there. Keep the hips low. Imagine you're carrying a bowl of water on your back and you're trying not to drop it. You can even play around with a backwards crawl. And just have fun with it. So give it a try. Try the knee version first, then lift the knees. Try just the forward version, and then maybe play around with the backwards version. Again, it's such a great full body exercise. You don't even realize how much work it is until you do it. So enjoy that little series there. Do that upper body core portion, 2 to 4 sets. And then make sure you check out the stretching video as well to cool down. Enjoy!